Hi everyone, I'm Beta Delisi, and in this video we're going to talk about misconceptions when buying a tenanted property. Oftentimes, buyers are of the position that just because they're purchasing a tenanted property, certain rules or laws don't apply to them. Here are some misconceptions. Number one, the tenant has to leave. That's a big misconception because the tenant actually does not have to leave. There's no one able to evict the tenant unless a notice is served, a legal procedure has been followed, your position is advocated with the landlord and tenant board, and the board issues an eviction order. You see, only the landlord and tenant board has the ultimate authority to evict a tenant and end a tenancy by issuing an order, not a buyer and definitely not a seller landlord. Number two, the buyer can increase the rent if the rent is below market value. Misconception. Let me explain. There are rules related to rent increases, and yes, rents can be increased per the rules. However, just because the rent is below market value does not mean that a buyer can do whatever they want and increase the rent after closing. The only two things that really change after the buyer steps into the shoes of a seller landlord is, number one, where the rent is paid to, and number two, who the rent is payable to. Misconception number three, cash for keys is a quick fix. Yes, it can be a quick fix. However, sometimes cash for keys does not work. And the reason why is because sometimes sellers don't agree to pay a ridiculous amount that a tenant is requesting. Sometimes tenants don't want the cash. Sometimes they need additional time. And if there is an agreement of purchase and sale, you know that time is of the essence. So cash for keys does not always work. And number four, the landlord and tenant board always fast tracks evictions when a buyer needs to move in. That is a huge misconception. The landlord and tenant board hears matters between landlords and tenants. Either one can apply to the landlord and tenant board. However, the landlord and tenant board can only expedite a matter if they believe there is some hardship, whether it's on the landlord-seller's part or whether or not the buyer can prove hardship. So it's not a guarantee that just because there is an agreement of purchase and sale, just because the buyer is living out of their car and showering at a coffee shop, or just because the property is sold for $20 million, that the board will agree to granting an expedited hearing. I hope you found this video informative. If you have any questions, call us first.